This picture is where I started. Very humbling beginnings. These pictures are where we've come together as a couple and as a family. And the next set of pictures is what we want more of. And that's our goal. Hey YouTube, my name is Steph and I am half of Steph and Ken, and we are creating our roadmap to retirement. I am a curious and intellectual person. I am a wife, I'm a mother of two, and I'm a sister of one. We are approximately 2.5 years from retiring, and we are trying to prepare and map our way there so that we can try to have a successful retirement so that we will be able to do the things that we've always dreamt of for this retirement, and that we can be able to have generational wealth for our children and leave something behind. We will be the first in our generation to do that, and that's something that we look forward to. So why create a YouTube video? Why am I doing this? First of all, let me just tell you, you will see me look down. I am not a professional. This is my first video. So I'm not a professional. So I will glance down at my notes just to make sure I'm staying on track and I'm covering everything that I wanted to cover in this video. So if you see me glance down at my notes or you see me stumble over a few words, please have some grace and please be understanding that, again, this is not something that I do. It's something that I'm new at. This is my very first video. I hope that I can get better at it. But for this first video, and maybe even the second or third video, if you see me glance down at my notes, just please give me some grace for doing that. So anyway, back to what I was saying. Why? Why do I want to make a YouTube video? Why do I want to create YouTube videos? Because I think our story is encouraging. I think that our story actually wants to be told. I think that it's a story of showing different situations that you can overcome. Sometimes the things that life throws at you. It could be something from your childhood. It could be from your adulthood. But just showing that you can achieve whatever you set yourself out to achieve. I don't believe that our story is a one in a million story. However, I do believe that our story is one of millions. And I think that being able to share our experiences with millions of others that have similar experiences in their childhood, their young adulthood, being an adult, I think is something that is valuable. It's a valuable commodity to be able to share those experiences with people because they can be helpful. It makes people feel like they're not alone, that if someone like them can do it, they can do it too. So that is why we want to share this story with you. And like I said, I do believe that our story wants to be told. So just stay with us and listen to this story. I don't think that it's one that can be told in one video because there's just a lot that has happened in both of our lives, mainly mine. But I do believe that this is a story that is worth listening to. I think there's something valuable for a lot of people in it. And I think that we can all come away, even myself, just listening to my own story, I could come away with something valuable that can be used and helpful for current day and for our future. Here's a time when you're going to see me glance down at my notes because I do have notes regarding my most current experience and kind of another reason that led me to making these YouTube videos. And it's because I recently left my job, but I just want to make sure that I am covering some of these feelings that I had when I was at work and my reason for leaving my job. So I'm going to glance down a few times just to make sure that I'm covering everything. I have been struggling with my job for all of 2025. I had gone back and forth on what I needed to do. I was being undervalued at work, not appreciated. And it just felt like everything that I did at work to try and make my value be known seemed to just not be something that was valuable. We had just had new management come on. Our new manager just was not appreciative of the people that worked in my office, not just myself, but other people as well. I was just one of many. However, for me, it started to take a mental toll on me because when I came in, I put so much into this job. I put so much of myself into this job. And for that to not be appreciated by the current management, also regarding our pseudo management that had been there for the years that had been there, to just not be appreciated was really a tough thing. So like I said, my emotions were back and forth, and I knew that I had to make a decision. I just wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't ready to make that decision, but that decision was kind of being forced into fruition, whether I was ready to do that or not. So it kind of came to a head the week of my 54th birthday, which was in August, where I finally realized that I was being treated the way I was being treated. I wasn't being valued the way I should have been valued because I was allowing that. And that was a tough pill to swallow. I was one of those people where I felt like, I knew my value, and I knew my value so much that I was not going to allow other people to take advantage of me. But knowing your value and actually putting it into action and saying, I am valuable enough to say that I deserve better, that's two different things. So, well, I could say I knew my value, I wasn't actually living my value. So, the week of my 54th birthday, I just realized I needed to do something about that because nothing was going to change if I continued to allow things to be the way they were. So, I came to the conclusion that I needed to part ways with my employer. And that's what I did. I parted ways with my employer. I didn't have a plan in mind. I just knew that I was going to continue on this route. I felt like I was starting to sink into some form of depression. And I knew this was not healthy for me. And I needed to do this for myself. So I stepped away from my job and I said, I need to strike a new path here. When I stepped away from my job, I finally stepped on the scale at home, which is something I've been putting off doing because my clothes are telling me that I gained weight. We all know what that feels like. Things get a little tighter. Some not just a little tighter, but you can't fit any longer. So I had been avoiding the scale, but I finally said, you know what? Let me get on this scale and see what I've done to myself. Let me see the physical impact of this devaluation at my job. Well, the scale confirmed what my clothes have been telling me. I had gained over 40 pounds in less than a year. So I need to work on that as well because that is something that is not good for me either, especially when we're talking about retirement. I am looking forward to being able to do the things that we've wanted to do, and carrying this extra weight is not going to get me to that point. So that's something that I'm going to be working on as well, getting rid of those extra 40 pounds plus that I took on at my devaluation job. I need less of this stress and more of this peace. Here's a moment where you're going to see me look down again at my notes because, again, I want to make sure that I am covering everything that I said I wanted to cover in this video. So I'm going to take a glance down at my notes and just kind of read a few things off of here that I think I wanted to make sure that I covered. But we're talking about retirement. We're talking about how we are going to get to our retirement. We are, like I said, about 2.5 years out from retirement. So my husband is still working in the office, and our roadmap extends really from our childhood all the way through to our current situation. So our childhood really kind of was a steering factor in some of the choices that we made, some of the things that we did to get us to this point. So it's kind of really important for us to acknowledge our childhood. It's really important for us to, acknowledge that the things that took place in our childhood, some of them, although they may have been tough, some of them were not the greatest situations to be in. Some of them I wish that I could go back and things were a little bit different. But I do understand too that some of those things that took place in our childhood, even though they were hard, they served a purpose. They served a purpose. They gave us some grit that I don't think we would have had we not had some of the things, the challenges that we had in our childhood. Some of the things that we did to get to where we are today required grit. They required some strength. They required some overcomer attitude, and that's exactly what we got from our childhood. So I want to make sure that we're sharing that with you because it's so easy to talk about, oh, yeah, we're going to retire in 2.5 years. Okay, but how do we get here? How did you get to that point? I mean, man, you came from here and you got here. How did you get there? So that's what we want to really, really, really cover. So I'm going to share both of our stories, kind of go back and forth between the two of us. Again, like I said, it's not a story that can be shared in one video. It's going to be multiple videos to share this story with you. And I think once we get to the end of the story, I think you will understand why it took so long to cover our lives. So I'm going to glance down. So the big question, I know that everyone's saying, well, why poverty, to retirement at 56? Well, both Ken and I grew up low income, no income kids, inner city kids. So we did not have a glamorous youth. But we could sit here and tell you, man, because of that, life was really hard. We just felt like we couldn't do what we needed to do. But instead of telling you that, because there were moments where we probably felt that way, but in those moments, we still dug deep, even as children, to get us to where we wanted to be. So what I want to do is I want to share the overcoming part of our story. That, even though things may have been tough at times, but that we were able to find some strength somewhere within ourselves or outside of ourselves externally to get us to where we are today. But most importantly, one thing that I wanted to share about growing up in poverty is that poverty is not a badge of shame. It really isn't. It is not something to be ashamed of. It is not something where you need to hang your head. It's not something that you need to keep a secret. It is what it is. It was what it was. You can take that situation and let that be your strength. Let that be your super strength, that secret ingredient that keeps you moving when other people are slowing down or other people don't have what it takes to move forward. Let your beginnings be your super secret strength that keeps you moving in the direction that you want to go. It is not a badge of shame. I do not feel ashamed about my upbringing, my youth. I don't feel any shame about that. It was something I had no control over. It was my situation. And I'm hoping that through our story, that someone else can find the strength to say, I am stronger than my situation. I deserve more. I am going to continue to move forward in my life because this is what I deserve. So I'm hoping that our story can give you that. All right, so let's dive in a little bit on my story. So the house that you saw at the beginning of the video is my grandfather's house. So what you'll see in this picture here is me standing in front of my grandfather's house when I graduated from high school. That was what my grandfather's house looked like when I was growing up. It held a lot of warm and wonderful memories. The second picture that you'll see is my grandfather's house shortly after it was set on fire and it was burned in the early 2000s. I remember when I saw it actually on the news, where there was a story on the news one evening saying how all of these houses on this one block had been set on fire. I think there were 7 houses. And when I started looking at the news, it was very hurtful, heartbreaking. And I didn't see my grandfather's house in particular, but I did see homes that were surrounding my grandfather's house. And I just remember looking, and I knew in my heart that his house was one of the 7 that was burning. And it took me a few days to go over there to see if it was his house or not. And it was. And it, like I said, it was very heartbreaking to see that. So I think probably the most devastating part about my grandfather's house being set on fire was that my grandparents moved here from the South during the Great Migration, and my grandfather began working for Ford Motor Company. He essentially lifted his family out of poverty by moving them from the South to the North during the Great Migration. And this accomplishment was something that he was very proud of. I think as a family, we were all very proud of him being able to do that because it was a great accomplishment. And I think that's what devastated me the most, is that I knew that this was not something that was given to him or to my grandmother, that it was something that they sacrificed for. They left their family in the South to come north to have better, and to have that taken away was devastating. And it was also something that he left to his grandchildren as his way of passing down generational wealth, which is not a common thing in the Black community. So for that to be taken away from our family was really, really heartbreaking and devastating. Again, it was just a kind of an exclamation mark on my upbringing, my childhood, just kind of everything culminated in that house going up in flames. It just was a perfect representation of some of the things that I had experienced in my childhood. So we'll cover that, but I do want to get to Ken's beginnings as well. Ken is the youngest of 8, and his parents both worked. So he was in a 2-parent home. Both of them worked. Actually worked very hard. Between the 2 parents, they held down 4 jobs. I would imagine that taking care of 8 kids is very expensive, and not for the faint of heart. So 4 jobs is what it took for them to keep the lights on and all the mouths fed in their home. So with Ken being the youngest of 8, some of his siblings were older, and old enough to the point where they began having children. So some of them, when they began having children, they stayed home. So not only did his parents have, the kids that were still needing to be taken care of, they also had some of their kids that they were taking care of as well. So with Ken, his mom had made this determination with him that she wanted to see him make it past the high school level, that was an achievement that she wanted for at least one of her children. So that was something that she really dug into and wanted to make sure that Ken made it past his high school level. But with having so many kids at home and now having grandchildren that needed to be taken care of, it kind of led Ken to becoming a latchkey kid, where he would let himself out in the morning and let himself in. He was responsible for getting his work done, and there were times where he was responsible for feeding himself as well. So as you can see, as the household grew, so did the work that was required to take care of this household. So that led Ken to becoming more responsible for his own upkeep, be responsible to make sure that his homework was done, make sure that he came and went from school and took care of business, as his mom wanted. So again, this was a latchkey situation for Ken, and with that responsibility, it made him be an ultra responsible person, which is kind of great because we're kind of opposites there. My upbringing kind of led me to some food insecurity issues. His upbringing led him to be ultra responsible, so that kind of helps us to balance each other out. But with that, Ken also learned what it felt like to be seen and not seen as well. So that was one of the things of growing up with so many siblings, growing up with some of his siblings having children, and growing up with his own nieces and nephews, being the same age that he was. It did lead to a situation where he was seen and not seen at times. So that is kind of where I want to stop with our childhood for today. And we will pick up in the next video. But I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of what I'm referring to when I say, poverty to retirement at 56. Even in that situation, it has not kept us from doing what we wanted to do. But the strength that we have today didn't start as adults. It was started when we were kids, being responsible, making those choices when we were kids to either do the thing that would get us a better life or do the thing that would hurt us and keep us in that situation we were currently living in. And so we were making those tough choices even as children. They weren't all adult choices. These were childhood choices that we were making, that helped steer our future and our paths to where we are now. So that's kind of what I wanted to kind of get out of part of our story today. So again, I will pick back up on it on the next video, to get a little more deeper into how my life spiraled from when my mom and my stepfather separated. So if you like what you've heard so far and you want to continue to follow along to see how these 2 inner city kids turn lemons into lemonade, please like and subscribe and share with your friends, family, anyone that you feel could get something from these videos. Again, like and subscribe. We'd love for you to continue to enjoy our story and to get something from it. Okay, so here's another moment where you're going to see me look down at my notes, because again, I want to make sure that I am giving you everything that I wanted to give you today. And for me, I am always I try to always be encouraging. I am an encouraged person, and I try to be encouraging. So, and I always try to give anyone that I'm talking to, a lift whenever I can, because that's important. It really means a lot to be lifted, to smile. Even when life is giving you lemons and you haven't got to the lemonade, but to be able to smile really does have a huge impact on not only your own life, but on those around you. So I'm going to look down because I have some notes here. So just please, again, be patient and give me that grace. So I just wanted to leave everyone on a positive note, and just to say that your past does not define your future. We all need to remember that. Your past does not define your future. Your habits do. Habits are very, very, very powerful. Habits can make or break you. And always remember that you get out of whatever you put into it. So, good or bad. I mean, if you are putting in good, you may not see it right away. It may take a little bit for you to get to that, but you will get good from it. If you put in bad, yeah, you're going to get the bad too. That's the way that works. And you don't get good out of bad, you get bad out of bad. So remember to always do good, put good out there, because you do get that back. And lastly, if you invest your time, your thoughts, your money, and your light into things that will move you forward, you will move. It's not the size of the movement that matters. It's the forward motion that matters. So remember, even small steps are progress. They may not be giant steps, but even small steps are progress. And these are things that I need to keep in mind as we are moving towards our retirement, because I have to work to keep my habits in check, because I still have those things that I brought with me from my childhood. Like I said, the food insecurity, where I tend to overbuy food as if we're, going to not have food. I have to keep those habits in check, because going into retirement, we will be on a stricter budget, a very defined budget. We won't have as much fluidity in our budget as we do now while we're working. And we want to make sure that when we get into retirement, that we are living within our defined means, and that we're not letting some of those bad habits put us in a situation where we could possibly have to go back to work at a later date. So conquering these things is huge. I don't know if I'll ever conquer them, but controlling them will be key for me. And I'm sure Ken will have his own set that he will need to control. But like I said, I am the one with some of those bad spending habits. So it will be me that will need to control those habits. So again, just kind of leaving you on that positive note that you can do whatever you put your mind to, that your past does not define your future, that whatever you have gone through, you can take that situation and you can find light at the end of that tunnel. It may be hard, it may take some work, you may need to get help to do it, and that is okay as well, but you can do it. You are stronger than what you give yourself credit for. Just remember that you are stronger than what you are giving yourself credit for. You've got these two inner city kids that did it. You can do it too.